That alone, readings of verse number 32. An inferential feedback can come only from a storage of information. Verse 32. What is known is not that in which all qualities inhere, only the qualities. As this in which all qualities are said to inhere is not visible, earth and all else do not exist. Remember that there is only a form in knowledge which supports. In order to get the full implication of this verse, you have to read Shankara's commentary on the fourth section of the first chapter of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It's a very elaborate piece and as easily readable as Shankara always is. Or you should very carefully read the Critique of Pure Reason by Kant. Both Shankara and Kant want us to examine two aspects in knowledge. One is what we call experience, and the other may be called the cause of experience. We are very familiar with experience. Everybody says you should have experience, and that is very important. What exactly is experience? In short, it is the knowledge of what is. This is different from why it is. What is one thing, why it is another. I am now talking to you and you are listening to me. You understand that I am talking and you are listening. This is an experience. Why is it that you should experience that I am sitting here and talking while you are listening? Why don't you think this is a phantom sitting here and that you only appear to be listening? Why don't you doubt like that? What necessitates a compelling feeling in you that this is true, that you are not sleeping, and this is really a wakeful experience, that all of us are sharing the experience so it cannot be untrue? Where does that kind of compelling necessity come from? Is that also experience? When you and another person have experiences, what makes you feel that it is a universally shared experience rather than a private one? Kant draws a line between what is and why it is. He calls the why an a priori judgment and the what an a posteriori judgment. Shankara asks, what is the source of this thing you called anubhava or experience? The source is the body. All your experiences are derivations of a sensation, a perception, or a memory. Whatever grand name you give it, these things happen only as a result of certain bodily states. As they all come from bodily states, they cannot be called the self. Their source is already contaminated with the properties of the non-self. Shankara wants us to turn away from experience itself to that which is the cause of experience. Combining what Shankara and Kant say, Narayana Guru draws a line between dharmi and dharmam, between the ground and what is manifested on it. The Western conception of memory likens it to calling a person in from another room. He is not currently present and we want him, so we call to him. From the next room he enters and we identify him as the person we wanted. But is there really anything coming into one part of your brain from another part that we call the memory bank? Is there a dark chamber somewhere in your brain that is kept locked up, from which something pops out and goes to another part of the brain, saying, "Here I am," when you recall? Despite the theory, no such thing has yet been found. The brain is made up of all this gray matter. When you examine it under the microscope, you see nothing but some liquids in which nerve cells are floating around. The nerve cells have ends called synapses, which interlock with other nerve cells. When something happens, your energy is tickled in a certain way. The only thing experimenters have been able to observe that might correspond to a memory recall is a change in the physical form of synapses. They observed changes in them which were very like ripples on the surface of water, or a whirlpool being formed by ripples moving in a certain way. Otherwise, everything remains the same. The quality and movement of the ripple and the bulges and depressions that appear are imagined to be memories. This is as stupid as saying that Beethoven's Appassionata Sonata is caused by twangs on the strings of a piano, which cause vibrations of certain frequencies. How can you say that? Naturally, to play piano music, you will touch keys that are connected to hammers that strike strings to produce vibrations of certain pitches. But it is putting the cart before the horse to say that music comes from the vibrations or that bulges produce memories. The scientists do admit one element of truth. They say there is no special thing called memory sitting anywhere. There are only bulges and depressions. That is the most one can observe on the basis of the physical and chemical background of knowledge. Narayanaguru further says, Vativu, meaning a form. In your pure consciousness there is a certain form which comes. When you cut off that portion alone, it is what you call empirical knowledge. People who call themselves empiricists concern themselves with the experiential part. Although we call Locke, Hume, Berkeley empiricists, this is an incorrect classification because Locke alone gave primacy to sensuous experience. Hume questioned it and Berkeley rejected it. Simply because of the context in which they were hitting at each other, we call them all empiricists, applying a wrong methodology of classification. If you do not have a background knowledge of all the philosophers, just making references is a waste of time. But I presume you at least know Locke, Hume, and Berkeley. According to Locke, there are no innate ideas. Man comes to this world with a tabula rasa, a clean slate of a mind. A child's mind has nothing written on it at first. Afterwards, he gets exposed to the world through his senses. He formulates ideas from impressions of pain and pleasure, from pleasant and unpleasant agitations. People speak names to him and show him forms. In this way, the coordination of names and forms are established in his mind. Slowly the child comes to relate cause with effect, and after some time it becomes fully indoctrinated in the cause and effect theory. This is questioned by David Hume. Is there any validity in formulating a causal relationship between two things simply because one comes after the other? For instance, we see water boiling and fire burning. The precedent factor was the burning fire. The antecedent was water boiling. So we relate one to the other and say the fire is the cause of the boiling water. And these concomitants always come together. Because of the concomitance of two things in a sequential order, we think one is the cause of the other. He says this is only because we are psychologically impressed in this way and that there is no necessity for it. Necessity is a principle which was brought to formal thinking by Descartes. He said there is one source of knowledge where your thinking is validated by an evidence which is inherent within, and called it self-evidence. This is found in mathematics. Whichever way you put 2 plus 2, it is always 4. It cannot be 5 or 3.5. There is an inner compulsion for everyone to agree that 2 and 2 make 4. Such self-evident truth is a mathematical necessity. Hume accepted this, but he asked if there was any mathematical necessity in believing fire boils water, since other possibilities can be imagined. It is only a psychological necessity. Thus, Locke's empirical stand was questioned and refuted. Even though it was not fully discarded, it was kept suspended by Hume. Then Bishop Berkeley said that what seems to be a universal experience is after all only your private idea. You formulate all your impressions using your own sensory system. So they are modulated within your mind, and everything is your own idea. In this respect, although his theme was empiricism, Berkeley should actually be considered an idealist rather than an empiricist. Kant started where Berkeley left off. When he wrote, he had before him Descartes, Spinoza, Leibniz, Locke, Hume, and Berkeley. Shankara had before him the Purva-Mimamsa people, who said if you do a certain action, it should yield a certain result, because every cause should have an effect. That means if you evoke a certain god with a certain mantra, that god should come before you and give you peace. They had formulated an elaborate system based on the psychodynamics of the word. They saw the earth as a manifestation of water, water as a manifestation of fire, fire as a manifestation of air, air as a manifestation of ether, and the substance of ether as sound. Therefore, the whole world is basically made up of sound vibration. If the vibration of sounds can become all the geometrical properties around us, then by hitting them with different kinds of sound, their properties can be altered. The Purva-Mimamsa's research went on formulating and structuring sounds that could be used as antidotes. In other words, if one formulation of sound causes this, this other one will undo it. Then you can redo it in another way. You can create many parallelograms of forces with your sounds. Thus they evolved an elaborate semantic system of mantras. They claimed a relationship between chanting a certain mantra and rain coming, and everyone believed them. They were another kind of empiricists, basing their philosophy on action and experience. And the Buddhists came along and said that they didn't agree, that those people were making a duality of subject and object. To them, subject and object are both aspects of the same total reality. Any differentiation between them is at best a kind of quasi-truth, both true and untrue. They summed it all up as ignorance. Then there were the Sankhyans, who believed neither in action nor the ignorance of the Buddhists. They argued, take anything, take earth. Earth is an element. How many qualities does it have? It has the quality that it can be touched, tasted, smelled, heard, and seen. Then they would analyze its fundamentals until they arrived at the thing in itself, tanmatra. Why does a thing in itself activate? There must be at least two principles, one which gives intelligence for an action, and another which gives the capacity for action, a principle of self-luminosity and a principle of self-volition. They call these Purusha and Prakriti. Finally, there came another school which maintained there should be some relevancy between one idea and another. Logistics is the most important structural secret by which the relations of things can be understood. They can be grouped by species, which in turn belongs to a genus. Within a genus can be many coordinated species. These divisions are made on the basis of specific and general qualities. In this way, the whole world was divided into generalities and specificities, and the relationships between them. This is the relation-relata complex. Philosophers of this school are called Nyayikas or logicians. So Shankara had all these schools before him. He put them all on one side and said, you all line up here. I have to put questions to you. Kant also kept his 6 empiricists on one side and questioned them. After rigorous and thorough questioning, they both rejected all their predecessors' arguments. Kant said their arguments were all tainted by aspects of their physical and sensual experiences, which they mixed with their knowledge. Shankara said essentially the same thing. All that you say is tainted by experience that can be traced to your bodily consciousness or an ego factor. The cream of the best things said by these two grand philosophers, one of the East and one of the West, is expressed by this one verse of Narayana Guru. He says all our experiences are of the dharma and not of the dharmi, because the dharmi is not amenable to our experiences. The other day we saw how we can affiliate ourselves with body consciousness and the social ego. These two affiliations can cause many modes of thinking and judgment within us. What we call our meditation is no meditation at all. It is only certain body postures. It is being self-conscious about many of our physical aspects, such as breathing, sitting in a certain way, or imagining a certain part of the body. We think that directing the mind inwards means actually looking inward at such and such a place, which is essentially an action. Thus, we are doing an exercise, not meditating. Shankara asked, why do you call it meditation? It is fun. It is some physical exercise. At best, it is a psychological exercise. Even so, it has nothing to do with the self. Real meditation is not easy. First, you must drop from your mind all the names that you know, including your own. Drop not only the names of persons and things, but also names of ideas such as compassion, patience, or whatever. I don't believe you've given up all names, but let us tentatively suppose you no longer know any nomenclature. Nomenclature means a label which you give with a sound or an oral or written sign. Now drop from your mind all memories of forms. You should now not be able to say Deborah or recall a form which conforms to Deborah. Forget the distinction of past, present, and future. Efface your location, such as Hall Street House, Portland. Next, throw away all directions, north, south, east, west, and above and below. When I ask you to give something up, you suddenly think of just that. It was not previously in your mind. You poor people are not thinking of your breathing at all until I say to forget it. Breathing is an action. Along with breathing, give up the whole world of action, any kind of movement. Now cancel away the duality of cause and effect. Forget that you are capable of knowing, feeling, breathing. Erase the distinction between I and the other. Make the usage of I totally meaningless. In short, all the injunctions I have been giving you are not to do anything, but to do away with everything. You are not asked to think, but not to think. You are not asked to recall, but not to remember. Not asked to win, but not to win. Suppose we have achieved such a state, even though we clearly have not. It is evident that even in this ideal state, there will be a presentation of consciousness. You can do away with virtually everything, but still a residual space and duration will remain for your awareness to exist. It is an irremediable impenetrability. Kant says this has a categorical nature, a persistence that is unavoidable and universal. He argues two necessary conditions to go along with the quality of a priori judgment. One is universality and the other is that it is imperative, categorically imperative. Shankara quotes the Upanishads, which say that to meditate should not be taken as an injunction. If you take it as an injunction, you are merely thinking of a bodily function. How can knowledge be other than by being knowledge? This is apprehended through what is called meditation. The two qualities which Kant noticed, the imperativeness of knowledge, which is luminous through its own nature, and the universality, which operates in and through all forms of manifestation all the time, roughly correspond to the images used by Narayana Guru throughout this work. At the core of all is the Karu, or the manifesting yoke, which is shining both inside and outside, as the supernal sun shining in the firmament of consciousness, as the one light that enables you to think your many thoughts, wake and sleep, eat and mate, as the one which is sitting as a witness beneath the tree of manifestation, as the one identity when two people say I, as the one ocean which floods and fills the vast desert of our lives, turning every grain of sand into a pearl of priceless worth. All through our study we have been seeing this one light which is us, but as soon as we act, we miss it. We pollute it with our sensations, with our body consciousness, with names and forms, time and space, cause and effect. In fact, it is the most spontaneous thing, happening without any effort on your part, to sit cross-legged, to concentrate on your heartbeat, or to breathe in a way that tortures your nostrils. It is always there by itself. You don't have to do anything. Yet it is the most difficult thing to know, because you are already caught in the grip of the competitive world, where body, mind, and senses are focused on values which are extraneous to your own self. To reclaim yourself from that feverishness, to bring you back to the pure, spontaneous happiness within, that is the only reason you have to sit cross-legged, turn inward or regulate your breath. It is all so you won't run into the marketplace again and again and hit your head against things which have no value for you. First, you imagine a certain necessity. It begins to haunt you. It comes like a devil and catches you. Then you get caught in the frenzy of it. Karma is waiting for someone to say, there is a necessity. Then it pounces upon them. Not being caught up in an action is not an excuse to be lazy. Please try to understand what the Guru is saying here. It is almost impossible, since for at least the last 100 years in European universities, the poor minds of every man and woman have been put on the anvil of conformity and beaten into the shape of the empirical religion. This verse looks so simple, so innocent, but in a way it makes all the difference. So at least for a fraction of a minute, enjoy the great freedom of your own self by throwing out all this garbage called name and form, cause and effect, obligation and society. And the free translation of verse 32 is as follows. What we know is only the attributes and not their sources. As universal abstractions cannot be perceived, it is incorrect to say that earth and all such are factual realities. They are only compositions of modes.